those who have joined us on YouTube channel gsmotivator live to watch this very informative and interesting and very much awaited webinar on tourism post COVID. And we have with us to talk on this particular topic our eminent speaker, distinguished guest speaker, Dr. Victor V. He is a professor in Taylor University, Malaysia, as well as he is a president, Buddhist Gem Fellowship, Malaysia. Also, he has served into tourism industry for a long time, and he is a visionary and a very important person for tourism industry. And we'll listen to him, we'll hear from him his views and his different methodologies and different schemes that is going to take place that has empowered Malaysia tourism and also empowered global tourism fraternity. So before I move on to Dr. Victor V, I want to show a few slides about ICSI. Let's move ahead. I'm really sorry for this. I think I have to move on with my slide. This is ICSI, and we are the link between 31 million overseas Indian, and together ICSI is making education relevant. And very soon, that is on 21st of July, not July, but 21st of June itself. That means on Monday, we are completing 1,000 webinar that we have started during COVID, 25th March 2020. And it's all because of your guidance, your support, your efforts, and your suggestions that you have given to us from time to time. And this is a complete collaboration between educators, motivators, and various other dignitaries, those who have joined us from time to time. And we all have come together to make education relevant. And we believe that whatsoever human mind can conceive and believe can achieve. So I welcome my guest speaker for today, Dr. Victor V. As I told, he's a professor in Taylor University, Malaysia. And Dr. Victor V is professor of Faculty Social Sciences, Food and Leisure Management, and also sits on the International Advisory Board of Asia Pacific Entrepreneur Awards. He started his career at the Economic Planning Unit of Prime Minister's Department, rising to the rank of Senior Macroeconomic Director. He served as Secretary General of Ministry of Tourism from 2004 to 2008 and Chairman of Tourism Malaysia 2009 to 2013. And the very famous and the most successful tourism campaign that we all have seen, Visit Malaysia year 2007, led the formulation of Malaysia Tourism Transformational Program for 2010 to 2020. So we are very grateful that Sir is with us, because with his vision, with his guidance, with his views, we can learn many things, especially the tourism fraternity that has joined today. We can learn many things from Sir, and we can imbibe that into Indian tourism as well. And we can plan how to develop tourism post-COVID in India and across the globe as well. Furthermore, at the international level, he chaired World Tourism Organization Program and Budget Committee during 2008-13. He had undertaken consultancy assignments for Government of Malaysia, World Tourism Organization, and United Nations Development Program. He was the lead consultant to formulate the ASEAN Social and Cultural Community, that is called as ASCC Blueprint 2025, and a member of high-level international team to formulate ASEAN Blueprint 2025. He is currently Secretary General of ASEAN Tourism Research Association. We salute you, sir, for your dedication and devotion towards tourism. And I'm just stopping sharing so that the audience can see you, can watch you, and can listen you. We welcome you, sir. You have taken time for us, and you have come on our platform. It's a great honor for us, sir. We welcome you once again and want to hear from you eagerly, sir.
Thank you very much, Chitra. Very good afternoon or evening to everyone listening to this webinar. Are my slides, you can see my slides now?
Not exactly, sir. Not
Oh, so I would have to share the slides. Okay, let me try to do that. Mm-hmm. Can you see it now? Are my slides up now, please, Chitra?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so thank you very much. So thank you so much for coming here. So I will be talking about travel after the COVID pandemic. And, travel has become such an important part of our life. We travel whenever we like to catch up with family members, or it's like attending business meetings or going overseas for a holiday. And before the outbreak of COVID-19, international travel reached 1.46 billion tourists. That's a huge number of tourists. And altogether, in terms of international receipts, it brought 1.48 trillion US dollars. So huge industry. But the impressive growth trend came to a screeching halt with the outbreak of the pandemic. We knew what happened because travel was picking up for the last, since the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, and so on. And I think this is for the first time it came to such a halt. Now, after being locked down for more than a year, countries obviously wants to jumpstart the tourism industry because we have all been devastated by the pandemic and people want to travel again without having to go through the hassle of being tied down with quarantined requirements. So this evening in my presentation, I'll be talking about how much does tourism contribute to the economy, and how do we control COVID? And I'll talk a little bit about the vaccine issues and the measures to jumpstart travel, and also the promotion of travel, rebuilding confidence, and so on. All right. So, all right. So first, let us look at the contribution of tourism to the economy. Well, we could see that tourism is a huge driver of Asian economies. In 2018, sorry. In 2018, it has contributed 5.5% of Singapore GDP, and for Malaysia, it's 5.8%. For Vietnam, it is even larger, 11%, 11%, 12%, 12% for Thailand. And in Cambodia, it goes up to 17% of GDP. And we know places like Bali heavily dependent on the tourism. And with the pandemic, wow, so many people are affected, unemployed, having to look for some alternative jobs to do. Now, the impact of the COVID-19 on the economy, the recession has a very high economic contraction across the world economy. And according to the World Travel and Tourism Council, it says based on its estimates, it says that about 64 million tourism jobs are lost in Asia alone because of the pandemic. And we know Changi Airport, I think many of you have flown through Singapore. It is the world's 17th busiest airport since last year, but it closed down 2 of its 4 terminals, including the latest terminal, Terminal 4, which is a beautiful terminal, because the number of flights have dwindled. So it has gone from handling 5.6 million passengers March last year, and now it is only about 100 arrivals and 700 departure per day. So you can see what a big difference of arrivals. Tourism industry is connected with many other industries, and we know that it is linked up with hotels and accommodations, and on the transportation side, on airlines, land transport, cruise ships, and then in terms of food and restaurants, wholesale and retail sectors, to handicraft manufacturing, fashion designers, and so on. And of course, tour operators, travel agents, tourist guides. And think of the family members that have to depend on the bread winner who works in the tourism industry. So we could see how devastating this the effect of the pandemic is on people's life. Now, in terms of the world economic performance, we need to go back to the IMF projection. The global economy contracted by 4.4% in last year, but expected to grow by 6% this year. And that is if things pick up very nicely. So we just need to keep on monitoring the situation, because it is very difficult to do any projections under such circumstances. And the recovery across and within countries diverge. Okay, for instance, the IMF predicts that in some countries the economic damage from the crisis is going to be really persistent. Now, this is what they call the Great Expectations. This is how the world economy is expected to grow this year. And in the case of India, looks good. The picture of India, it looks like 10% per annum this year. We hope this is true. This is the case. And also in the case of China. But of course, the projections will keep on being revised as we move along throughout the year, because a lot of things would have to depend on how well we are coping with the pandemic, for instance, vaccination and things like this. Okay. Now, one of the things that we should recognize is that as a result of this pandemic, 150 million people has slipped down the economic ladder last year. And this is the first pullback in 30 years. And in India itself, the combined reduction of people in the middle and the upper middle class have actually slipped down by 1/3. That is 32%. In South Asia, about 25%. So I would, based on these projections, it would seem that the middle class of Indians are really quite badly affected by this. So they're actually moving down in terms of they're hard hit. And amongst the developing countries or emerging countries, it would seem that if India and South Asia seems to be, hurt by this pandemic in a devastating manner. This is the contribution of world economic growth, 2021 to 2026. Obviously, the big generator will be China, but later, let us look at India. In the next 5 years, India is expected to contribute 8.4% of world economic growth. So when the world economy grow within these next 5 years, 8% is the contribution from India. And to know how big this is, in fact, the contribution of growth from India will be greater than the contribution from Germany, France, and UK combined. So India's contribution to world economy is going to be really quite substantial, 8%. Now, what are some of the things that we're trying to do in order to control COVID? One of the things is, academicians, they would like to come up with some kind of theory or hypothesis. So there is the Michel Gerfond from University of Maryland found that there is a difference between what is called a tight culture and a loose culture. So this is the definition of this academician. And she thinks that tight culture would be like countries like China, because the people in China tend to be highly respectful of rules and norms, whereas the loose culture would be the United States, because if the government says something, the people have another point of view. In China, they say government says do something, everybody does. everybody do the same thing. Okay, so that is what you call a tight culture. In the case of United States, it tends to be more the loose culture. So according to this study, they say that it is found that there is a difference just looking at the culture alone, how they have coped with the pandemic. Tight cultures like China, we could also say the same thing about many East Asian countries. They tend to be highly respectful of rules and norms. And loose culture would be like US, they tend to defy and break rules. And he studied 57 countries and concluded that loose countries tend to be 5 times the rate of COVID cases. That is, if you compare the tight, the loose countries with the tight countries, loose countries tend to have 5 times higher COVID cases than the tight countries. And in terms of deaths, to have 9 times more COVID deaths than the tight countries. So actually, we could say that countries which have the tight culture tend to have done much better in terms of controlling the pandemic. This is something, this is looking at something empirical and trying to link it up to some kind of theory, which is quite interesting, you know. So what is the impact of COVID on travel? And some of the issues that we will be covering will be, how is travel impacted? How do we build confidence in the travel industry? After the hype, what is the truth about vaccines? And how do we rebuild tourism in our own country? So there's a lot of questions that we like to ask. Now, how is travel impacted? Obviously, travel is picking up, but localized. But this, I could say, was before the second wave. Now with the second wave, even in the case of Malaysia, there's a lockdown. So basically, down here in Malaysia, we have a kind of a lockdown, so moments are limited. But just before the lockdown, we could actually see travel picking up, and it is the domestic tourism that seems to be have done well. Because you can't fly overseas to overseas destination, so people travel really to the seaside, the beach resorts and all that. So those are the hotels are getting about very good occupancy rate. And then we were hit by this pandemic because I think we were not so careful also, or maybe people get tired. 1 year of being, having restricted movements, after a while they get a little immune, and so they do not follow social distancing and all that. And this has actually wasn't the case in the case of Malaysia. I think in the case of India had actually been doing very well when we look at the statistics. And suddenly India was hit by this second wave, which is really very bad. But from what I understand, India seems to be, the numbers are actually coming down in India. So let us be hopeful, because I used to travel to India and also go with groups to India, especially because being a Buddhist, we tend to visit the Buddhist sites, but I also enjoy going to places like Ladakh and all that. So I would like the situation in India to recover very quickly so that we can actually travel again. Yeah, so now in terms of the measures, pandemic measures, there are things like travel restrictions, border closure, lockdown, and there is the idea of having the travel bubble, but travel bubble is rather complicated and really susceptible to the volatile COVID-19 situation. I will expand a little bit of what we mean by travel bubble. Leisure travel is the one that will pick up first. Because business travel is going to be dampened really, because but it is business travel that is high value travel, right? High value tourism, and it is the business class tourists, people who fly business class and first class, that subsidizes airfare for those. Because the people who are traveling in the business class, they pay more, about 2 or 3 times more than the people in the economy. First class, you pay something like 8 times more than the economy. So if the business travel tends to be of a low level, we can also expect that the cost of air travel will go up. So they need to be able to find how to spread the costs amongst the passengers. So we will see. Because there are also, in terms of business travel, there's a lot of substitute. For instance, now we are using Zoom. And so instead of traveling, people feel actually now increasingly more comfortable in doing online meetings. So the reason for going to the airport, traveling to an overseas destination, incurring costs and claims, which when you travel, you have to claim against the company and which you're working with. So it will actually reduce the cost of travel. So people would like online meetings as much as possible, and then maybe do face-to-face meetings as and when the need arises. So which means that business travel is going to be rather dampened, and this would have implications on the air travel and connectivity. It will also slow down regional integration, like in the case of the ASEAN region. You're talking about how to get the region integrated. So this is not a good story for regional integration. Now, how about the predictions of air travel? So for this, I had to go back to IATA, which is the International Association for Airlines, and they predicted that the global travel passengers won't return to the pre-COVID-19 levels until 2024. So even like next year and the year after that, we might see some return of people flying, but it's not going to be the pre-COVID level until we reach 2024. This is only an expectations. And when it comes to travel, it is basically short haul travel that is less than 7 hours. And this is going to occur, recovery would be much faster than long distance travel. And of course, in the case of Malaysia, tourist destinations, domestic tourism, as I mentioned, it was the one that picked up until we faced with the second wave, and that gave rise to our national lockdown. Now, so when do you begin to have COVID-19 and the risk of contacting COVID-19? So the question is that, is it worthwhile traveling? Why do you need to travel? Is it essential to travel? So these are the questions that people are asking. So businesses now use meeting apps. You have Microsoft Teams, you have Zoom, so we used to use Skype, but Zoom and Teams tends to be more user-friendly, and people have migrated to this platform. So Skype is also trying to improve the user-friendliness of their program. And of course, when we come to leisure travelers, we tend to look for something more flexible in terms of booking options. For instance, if something happened, how about the cancellation? Is it flexible enough for as far as cancellations are concerned? Because you have last minute changes, because situation is not so stable now. And sometimes when you cancel, or when you decide to postpone your trip, how much do you lose? That is also quite important. And there are also safety concerns about foreign destinations. Is it possible to enjoy a holiday when you have worry in the mind, especially if the destination is not so safe? And what happens after the booking of a holiday when you have a sudden outbreak? When you have quarantine, what happens? You can't get home because of border closure. So these are all the risks that comes with traveling at about this time. So how about the preferred traveling pattern? Traveling pattern is going to change. People prefer traveling to less crowded destinations. So if people go to India, they would rather not go to Delhi or through Mumbai. Maybe fly through the city, but some other destinations, we maybe go to Ladakh for a change. Go to Arunachal Pradesh, where you have less people. Cities are less attractive compared to wellness travel, places that offers yoga or meditation holidays or adventures or retreats. So these are going to be rather popular. So patterns have actually changed, and long distance travel will become more expensive because of social distancing. So they have to leave empty seats in the flights, and somebody would have to pay for that, right? Now, let us move on to vaccine issues. Vaccine is, of course, a very important solution to the current pandemic. Although not everybody agrees with that. Some people think that you don't need to use vaccines at all. So there are a lot of controversies on this, and a lot of things comes from in the kind of social media as well. Now, what is the truth of vaccines? The truth of the matter is that the pandemic will continue to fester unless the vaccine gets to every country. Now, the major problem is that actually is the rich countries that have controlled over the world vaccine supply, because in a sense, when we talk about the Western vaccine, they are really from the rich countries. 16% of the world's population has locked up 60% of the world's vaccine supply. There is one country, I do not want to mention the name of the country, has actually locked up 5 times more vaccine than its own population. So can you imagine? So there's so much hoarding of vaccines. Some of these vaccines they cannot use, and expiry date will come. And the problem is that if the rich countries are going to hoard the vaccines and the poor countries don't have access to vaccines, when are we going to get over this herd immunity and all that? When can we get over the pandemic? Because as long as the other countries are not population are not vaccinated, there is always a chance of the vaccine to mutate and you get new variants. And after a while, even the vaccines where the rich country people in the rich countries are vaccinated, they might not even have the protection against the new mutant vaccine. So this is really very selfish. So the issue is that if major population of the world are not vaccinated, the rich countries themselves are not going to be protected. Yeah. And of course, there is also the growing distrust of vaccines and also all kinds of scientific experts and all that. And lots of scare stories about vaccines. So actually, sometimes we also don't know. Now, how about the geopolitics of vaccines? Vaccines is no longer something just in the realm of health, but there's a lot of geopolitical issues connected with it. Yeah, one is, as I mentioned, the distribution of vaccines. So countries like US and UK has locked up the vaccines, so much so that even in Europe itself, at one time they became so frustrated because they had problems in getting vaccines, and US is not exporting any of the vaccines at one stage, and so EU had problems. And at one time, then the newspapers, the mass media used to run down the Russian vaccines, but now they have no choice, right? The Sputnik 5. And so some countries, like Hungary, for instance, despite not having the approval from the European Medical Agency, the EMA, which is the EU medical regulator, they decided to just use the Russian vaccine, despite not getting the approval for the EMA, because things are really getting so desperate. And so EU has to vaccinate about 450 million population because they do not want to have a third wave of coronavirus. And with this vaccine hoarding by the rich countries, so developing countries are now having to rely on Chinese and Russian vaccines, right? And China, of course, have the capacity to produce a vaccine in very huge amount. Russian vaccines is also something that people they are, I think, good vaccines, so they're looking forward to that. In fact, German Chancellor Angela Merkel says that if the Sputnik 5 is approved by EU, Germany will use the Russian vaccine. Hungary started using the Russian vaccine regardless of what, and some other countries are also using, European countries are also using the Chinese vaccine because things are getting so desperate, and with this kind of hoarding by some countries, so the others have no choice but to use vaccines from other countries. Now, how about the take-up rates of vaccines? Of course, in order to get the herd immunity, you need to inoculate about anything between 50 to 80%. But apparently, they say that in the case of COVID, you need to get about 70%. And the highly educated people and the health workers are the ones who seems to be against. There's a strong resistance from them to get to take up the vaccine. They do not want to be inoculated, and also there's a lot of negative publicity with regards to vaccine, and this is called infodemic. Under the new president for the United States, they actually became very successful in rolling out the vaccine program. Although under the previous president, while the U.S. was a complete disaster because the number of deaths and infection in America, or U.S. is still heading the list as the number one in terms of number one, not in a good way, unfortunately. Then after you have been vaccinated, how about using a digital vaccine passport? So this has also been floated around, and there's also a controversy. Okay, the digital vaccine passport is something that is mandatory. That is, you need to carry this along with you, maybe in your telephone, as you travel, in order to show proof that you have been vaccinated, and that is called a digital passport. And if you do not have this proof that you have been vaccinated, you're not even allowed to board a plane, right? So, and so in some cases, they will even extend it to other range of activities. Like you can't go to for sporting events, go to stadiums, go to gyms, go to desert. Wow. And of course, there are some resistance to it. I think one of the issues that this is highly discriminatory, because like children don't get vaccinated. Does it mean that the parents can travel and the kids cannot travel? And so it is actually worrisome. And also, how about the poorer countries where they cannot get access to vaccines? That means then they're not allowed to travel. Yeah, and so the other thing about the vaccine passport is that it is not an immunity passport. You might be vaccinated, but it doesn't stop a person who has been vaccinated from becoming a carrier. He can still continue to be infected. Of course, he won't die from COVID-19. Some of them do actually. But generally, if you've been injected, you have been vaccinated, a person will not die, but they can still carry the virus and they can infect other people. So where do we go now? The vaccine passport means that they are actually safe to travel to another destination as a host country. For instance, in India, people coming from overseas coming to India, you do not want these people to be infecting people of India, right? And the thing is, they carry a vaccine passport, but potentially they can also be carrying the virus. So, so it is difficult. So, even agencies like WHO is not in favor of the vaccine passport. Okay, so those are some of the issues about the pandemic that we face. Now let us look at how do we jumpstart travel. Okay. Now, the recovery of travel and tourism will be slow for countries struggling with pandemic management. Now, some of the countries that have been performing very well, for instance, in the case of Taiwan, Taiwan was a kind of a showcase, a poster boy of having done so well in the pandemic. But suddenly, there is an outbreak of cases. Even in the case of Vietnam, where nobody has died from COVID, suddenly there is an outbreak. Or even like Singapore. These are all the poster boys. But so it is tough, right? Situation is so changeable. Of course, for tourists, they would actually go to what we call trusted places. And these are the places with good governance and good health system. For instance, if there is an outbreak of the virus, that the government can go in very quickly, lock up the area, and put the thing under control. So countries that can do this kind of take up this kind of measures, tourists tend to be more confident of these places, and these are the countries that tend to be able to benefit from tourism. Okay, countries with a strong record of managing the pandemic, and so sometimes they can use this for the marketing strategies. Even Taiwan has done this. About how well they have done in controlling the COVID-19 and all that. But now you've got a case and they are actually frantic looking out for vaccines. And the AstraZeneca vaccines that they received from Japan, unfortunately, had led to some death in Taiwan. So, but they are resisting getting the vaccine from China. That's because of geopolitical reasons, not because the vaccine from China is not good, but it's geopolitical. So, so they would rather go for AstraZeneca, and then they don't have enough vaccines. So that becomes a big problem. Of course, there were ideas of travel bubble being floated around. This was attractive. This was just idea was floated around last year, but doesn't seem to be able to pick up the ground because of the uncertain nature of COVID-19. Yeah, countries that want to take up this idea of travel bubble, that means you allow people to travel without having to go to quarantine. You know, like Vietnam, Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan, Victoria, Auckland, and suddenly when they want to get the program rolled out, the travel bubble, suddenly there's a surge in cases. So the whole thing is being abandoned for a moment, put on a hold. Yeah. So this is tough. There are two approaches taken by government, national governments and local government. The first thing that their governments can do is to redesign their tourism strategies in order to focus on environmental protection and in order to maintain health protocol and keep the money in the local economy. Number two is to compete with the other countries for the dwindling tourist dollars. Tourists are not traveling so much, so countries are basically competing. And one of the ways they do is to give discounts in order to fill up the hotels so that the hotels don't close down, to have some numbers returning. Actually, this pandemic has, at least in the case of Malaysia, has led to a lot of closures of business. Hotels are closing down, travel agencies are all in trouble. So you do not know how long this will last. But this is really, really bad for the whole entire industry. Now, some of the travel trends after the pandemic, these are what people expected, that after the pandemic, people would actually want to travel with families and friends, because we lose that opportunity because of this lockdown and all that we could not be together with our family and friends. So traveling with family and friends will become more important. People want more flexible travel. More people will be working from home, and there could be a drop in mass travel. Before the pandemic, we were talking about too many tourists, complaining, mass tourism, yeah, destroying environment and all that. And now we don't even have the tourists coming in, yeah. And travel will be short haul, yes, before it becomes long haul. So long haul will take a longer time for it to pick up. There's also what we call vocations, work combined with vacation. This is something that is going to be tried out by Phuket. Phuket, about 70% of the economy depends on tourism, and now people are unemployed, and actually they become poor. They drop no money actually for food. Actually, it's quite terrible. Yeah, Phuket is this destination, so they're now opening up. So they say that you can actually go to Thailand. They give you a long visa, so you can actually work while on the vacation. You can work under the coconut tree at the beach and just enjoy yourself. Now with good internet connections, yeah, you can go to your dream destinations. You can go to Mount Kilimanjaro and Everest Base Camp, wherever it is, and do your work down there and enjoy the destination. So this is work plus vacation. And also focusing on the middle for the domestic tourism, for the middle and high end of the segment. And for people who are more conscious, they are more selective of their surroundings. People are more concerned about environment, and of course, safety and flexibility becomes really important. Okay. Now, let me just talk about some recovery. How do we promote traveler recovery? One is there is a nice report that has been prepared by WTTC. This was prepared by WTTC and Oliver Wyman. That's looking at the future of travel, right? And the reports also look at the trends. For instance, how does the demand evolution, then traveling in hygienic conditions, innovation, digitalization, sustainability. And these are some issues that they are looked at. Now, it is important for governments to continue supporting the travel and tourism sector throughout the entire recovery process. If government do not look after them, we are just going to lose a lot of players in the tourism industry. Yeah. And when you lose them, after the COVID, it takes a longer time to pick up. Meanwhile, the people whose business have failed are suffering, and their entire families are suffering. So governments should try to ensure that at least there is some kind of business, some kind of support, so that this business can continue, yeah, in some form. One is to rebuild confidence in the travel industry. Confidence is really important. It means that we need to have tight health protocols so that the travelers are safe, and they also are concerned about the safety of the destinations. So here we talk about the guidelines, health certification, and also some kind of certification and passport for cross-border travel. Somehow we do need some health certification, because how do we know that a person is safe when they come over to our part of our region? So some kind of health certification will be needed. Of course, there are also some green zones for recipient destinations, and this means that the destinations themselves are very efficient in controlling any cases of outbreak. And then there should also be high standards of sanity, cleanliness, of hygiene, so countries that have in the industry, they have done well in maintaining high standards of cleanliness and hygiene. This is how you can build up the confidence, and also this is also the opportunity to build up the standards of the quality of service, the safety, the hygiene, the reliability and trust through the entire value chain. All right, and the environments are now going to be more hands-free. So instead of touching on doorknobs and all that, they need installations that do not require people to touch, like in lifts, in so many things where the contact with the next, you try to reduce touching, because that's the way the virus actually could be spread. Yeah. And also the effectiveness in communication in order to build up confidence. So confidence is one of the things, and also to rebuild tourism as a priority. Yeah. Tourism is hardest hit, that we know, and so there are some key priority actions that needs to be done of how we restore traveler confidence, and how we ensure fair and equitable government support for tourism business, especially during this time. So, but of course, we know that the government is also facing budgetary issues, and this is the time when businesses are not paying taxes and all that, and government tends to overspend because of the pandemic. They have to spend more than what they would normally do given the normal situations. And of course, we need to strengthen cooperation within the country itself, among the various players with the government and all that, and also across countries, for us to build up a sustainable tourism industry. Now, let me just very quickly talk about promotion. We should also try to reinvent the way we do promotion. Like in the case of Malaysia, we used like to do that CNN Malaysia Truly Asia kind of promotion. It is really quite expensive, and that's reaching out to many people. I've seen some very beautiful promotion from India and from the Indian tourism. But there might be other ways of promoting. One way is making use of storytelling, and these encourage people to go into more like in-depth into a destination, and some destination stories will inspire tourists about the uniqueness of the destination. So tell us a bit more story about the destination, rather than beautiful pictures giving a wide range of colors and people and food and spas. Okay, one example is done by the Singapore Tourism Board. this person that's standing at the door. This is the first in the series exploring Little India in Singapore, because you know there's in Singapore there's a little segment where they call Little India, and it is called Of Garland and Garment. This is episode number 1. In the this person is called Agent Tosh, so he tries to be like Sherlock Holmes, and by using clues and humor, they move from one place in Little India to the other, and very fascinating stories behind the shops. So this is an example of how you can use stories, telling stories, making people interested. Because normally when you go to Singapore, you just go for like maybe 2-3 days, do shopping, and then maybe you go to Little India. There's nothing much because, well, I mean, when you go on the main street, well, you say, well, that's Little India. But once you start going into a deeper level, you go to the shops itself, the stories that they have for each of the shops. They're so fascinating. So this is the way of how you make people to remain in the destination, stay more in depth, learn about the stories of the destination itself. So this is one way of promoting, yeah? And also storytelling. It could be streamed. Now you got live interaction. You got Facebook Live. Now you also have like 5G. Later on, when 5G comes around, you can make use in order to increase the experiential value, especially among the young travelers and all that. So there's a lot of things that we can do by making use of ICT. Okay, so that is as far as promotion is concerned. Now, for us, for the industry to pick up, we need international cooperation. That is cooperation amongst government itself, and between the government and the private sector, because we need to harmonize the lifting of travel restrictions, and also to standardize contact tracing and testing requirements. And also the public and the private sector should agree on the health and safety standards for the industry itself. And this, we need to also ensure sufficient and swift testing for COVID-19 in order to minimize the spread of the virus. And of course, you need political and financial support from the government for the tourism business that is suffering. Many are failing, not because the business is badly done. In fact, sometimes they're doing business so well during the normal period, but because of this situation, it is like having a big tank of water. You just have outlet is open, the inlet is completely closed, the water will just drain off from the tank. It's exactly like that, regardless of whether whether the business is well run or the business is badly run. Yeah, so industry is caught in that situation, and now we have to adjust to the new normal. As we say, domestic tourism first to recover. After domestic tourism will be short haul regional travel, and then you move on to the medium haul between regions, and then you go on to the international travel. So it opens up like that. And the tourism promotion will direct early marketing efforts to encourage people to travel within the country and regional travel. Okay, so because these are the places that will pick up, so of course it makes sense to promote more domestic and regional travel tourism. Yeah? And then the government themselves could offer incentives for customers for traveling experience that they could support by giving, some subsidization, special insurance, and guarantees, medical care, things like that, in order to help the industry. And then of course you will have some digital initiatives like IATA come up with the Air Focus ID. So with this IATA Air Focus ID, it is possible for you to get onto the plane and travel. And there are a few initiatives. Even WTTC also has something like what they call a safe and seamless traveler journey. And then it's important for us to cultivate resilience for the industry. Yeah, so so we need to build up sustainable destinations. We have to look after the destinations, because sometimes the destinations themselves get affected and negatively impacted by tourists. And so we have to establish guidelines and to enhance, for instance, that wildlife and environment protection. This must be ongoing. Yeah? And also the public and private partnership becomes really important for us to ensure that the destinations are taken care of. And the also tourism businesses, because of the COVID-19, so sometimes there is a big spike in refunds, and the tourism business, if they don't get any income, they could hardly refund anybody, and so they also suffer liquidity problems, and cash flow tends to be limited, and this is when some kind of support might be necessary. So let me just conclude by saying that actually the road ahead is still uncertain and is challenging, and we need greater cooperation between the government, between governments and within the governments, as well as between government, the private sector, and the local communities. And we have also to take steps to ease the burden on the traveler, and they put safeguards measures in order to restore traveler experience in that. So these are some things that we need to do in order for the industry to really pick up. All right. So I will just end the my presentation here. So maybe there are some minutes left if you'd like to ask some kind of questions.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for this detailed presentation that you have given us. And actually saying it covers every aspect of tourism post-COVID. So very, very informative. What all not it has, like you have talked about vaccinated passports, then trusted places, then resilient and sustainable tourism. Then to promote tourism marketing should have tourism stories to tell. Then technology is playing a very good role, and travel incentives and government that is providing. So everything it is covered. So even you talked about green zones countries. So all in all, I would like to ask one thing about tourism accommodation industry. When we talk about hospitality particularly, so how it will shape in the coming future post-COVID, particularly the hospitality one, the accommodation sector.
Yes. The accommodation sector tends to be very tied up with whether or not they could get people to come, right? During this time, the hotels are so very badly affected, and sometimes they can get some kind of support by, if the government, for instance, when they hold some kind of activities to make use of some facilities in the hotels itself, will be of great help. So at this time when the hotels are not getting the staff, and they are not getting the customers, I think there are many hotels are just operating at a very low level. Many of the staff also has to be has been given the VSS. So this is really a tough time. But sometimes when we are over concerned about the current situation, we fail to prepare for what is to come. Because travel, it has actually become a fact of life. People would like to travel again when it is safe. So this is the time for us actually to improve the quality of our hotels. And we could see that especially amongst the branded hotels, the 5-star hotels like Marriott and Hilton and all that, they've actually improved their procedure, so that in terms of how they run the hotel, such as reducing the touch of of contact, and also in terms of the cleaning protocol, in terms of so when the hotel does this, it creates a lot of confidence amongst people, and so these are the properties that the tourists will gravitate towards. So if the hotel is still being able to sustain itself, so this is really now the time to try to improve itself, to so that in order to be ready for when the tourism industry starts picking up again.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for your answer, sir. And even if we look about many young students, they are studying the tourism courses, not even in India, but other parts of countries as well. So how do you look and what you want to tell them as far as tourism education is concerned? And they are very much concerned about their job roles and further skills development and how their studies and studies. So that will obviously take the part, but again, their job scenario and the skills development, the practical part of that thing. So how will it take?
I understand that very well, Chitra, because coming from Taylor's University, in fact,
Yes.
Taylor's is in terms of the QS ranking of international universities, Taylor's is in the top 20 university in the world for tourism studies. And so, we have been doing very well. International students come over to Taylor's in order to study tourism. So some of my students also, some of them are graduating. So this is really quite tough. And I think we also need to be honest to them because when they go out, they will find that there will not be many jobs. When they go into tourism, when they enroll for the tourism course, the industry itself is doing so well. It doesn't look as if the industry itself is going to face any setback. It keeps growing and growing every year, for the last 30, 40 years, So it looks as if it is not an industry that's going to fail. And suddenly before they graduate, they find that the jobs have actually just evaporated because even experienced staff has to be laid off from the industry. But I think the nature of tourism is that tourism wants to build a well-rounded individual. So don't think that when a person comes out from the university with tourism study, that they need to exactly be doing a tourism job. This is the time for them to get experience working in other areas, picking up other skills, because later on, these are the skills that will actually make them a much better person, a much better employee when they get into the tourism in a job in the hospitality, because you need all kinds of skills in order to make it work. It doesn't matter. It doesn't think that a person must actually be fixed in the idea that now I've graduated with the tourism studies, I must get into the tourism industry. Never mind, do something else. Learn up some new skills. And then later when the industry pick up, then you can come back and you've got new sets of skills that you never imagined before. Because even like this pandemic itself has given actually a lot of opportunities. Much as we say that businesses are failing, but there are some other business that are doing extraordinarily well because of the situation. So it depends on, are we using the situation well? Are we prepared to try new things and learn up new things? Things that sometimes you do not think that you get into, but once you get into it, you develop expertise in that area. And they actually make you a much more flexible and become more dynamic later on when you get into the tourism industry. So tell them not to lose hope. Tourism itself will recover, definitely. People do really want to travel. Now, of course, the jobs might not be available, but don't hesitate to pick up skills in other areas and build up your experience. And, just get the kind of experience, whatever it is. And that experience will later on become very helpful and will go with you. Those are the kind of life skills that you carry along with you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. True, true. Very true. Best days will come again.
Yes, yes.
Uh,
Because
so,
travel has almost become a lifestyle now, right? In
yes,
the
sir.
in the age that we live, it has becomes a lifestyle.
Yes,
It is
sir.
as important as having your handphone. When you get out in the morning, you have to look at your handphone. Travel is like that. We want to travel, but it's only that the situation is not there for us to travel yet because of the pandemic. But the pandemic is not going to be there forever. It won't last forever. Eventually, it will fade away, and then we will be able to get back to and do other things as well, right? Yeah.
And so, since you have come on our platform, we want to listen from you that during your times with Malaysia Tourism, you have made the transformational program for Malaysia Tourism. So, what all you did in that, and how was the experience? And if you get a chance to do it right now in the post-COVID planning mode, so what transformation you want to bring at present, and what you have did at the time of Malaysia tourism development? We want to listen to that, sir.
Okay, at that time when I was with Tourism Malaysia, there was a time of rapid growth for tourism industry. In fact, during my time, we did so well in terms of promotion and also for outreach in the also developing the connectivity, because we were working with airlines like Air Asia. Air Asia was expanding rapidly within the, especially in the Southeast Asia region. And also amongst the ASEAN countries, we adopted air liberalization because before that, countries were very protective of their airspace. And then later on, as part of the regional grouping amongst 10 countries, we decided to liberalize our airspace. And therefore, that sets the, the environment for the airlines to grow and to expand. Sometimes when we become too protective of our airspace, you find that travel becomes really expensive. And of course, if you have the legacy airlines which controls the airspace, they will try to protect their turf, and they do not want competition. But as what was agreed amongst the ASEAN countries with this air liberalization, there was a rapid expansion of low-cost airlines within the region itself. And because of that, secondary cities and even tertiary cities now being opened up, because legacy airlines will fly from major city to another major city, but they will not want to go to secondary cities. This is what Air Asia has managed to be done. So looking at the opportunity, also in the case of the world itself, the global world was experiencing very good economic growth. So we launched a very powerful campaign on Malaysia truly Asia and all that, working with the airlines, working with our agencies overseas to do a promotion for Malaysia. And because of that, we were very successful. And also, I ran the Visit Malaysia Year campaign 2007 because that was the 50th anniversary for Malaysia. Malaysia's attained its independence, I think, about 10 years after India. So we ran the Visit Malaysia Year campaign, and we call it the golden anniversary because 50 years anniversary is the golden anniversary. And of course, we come up with images, songs, events, and all that, and promote it. This is something that India is extremely good. Of course, India has got Bollywood, and so I see that some of the images of the kind of things that you capture and put it on the screen creates the interest for people to want to come to your country. So actually, promotion is like that. You sell a dream. When people look at the promotion, they feel, wow, I really want to go to that destination. So we have actually done very well as a result of which. But after that, I think after I have left the agency tourism industry, the tourism industry didn't do so well. It tends to be more subdued. And also because the case of the MH370 and all that. So that coincided. They wanted to run another Visit Malaysia campaign, but then two of our airlines, something happened to them. MH17 also had a problem of being shot down over Ukraine. And so that Visit Malaysia was not successful because of this kind of conditions. And then another one, they were supposed to have Visit Malaysia 2020, which coincide with our Vision 2020 for Malaysia. And you know what happened to 2020? We got the pandemic. So the subsequent two Visit Malaysia years was not successful. So I think that now the industry in Malaysia is languishing. What is actually needed is for us to be able to pick up and reinvent ourselves, to come up with some strong selling propositions. There needs to be a kind of a revival and a renewal of the industry. So sometimes when we are faced with a pandemic, everybody begins to lose focus, and I think that is the problem that we face in Malaysia. So if I'm in this kind of position to influence the policy of tourism, I would say that is the thing that we need to do. This is the time now, because people are basically hanging around at home. They want to do something, right? The industry players are hanging something. Is it not possible to try to get them to do something, to work on some good ideas and then try to reinvent the tourism industry? So this is a good time, because in terms of timing, people do have the time, right? And this is the time that we need to upgrade the standards, upgrade qualities. And also, if you're thinking in terms of training of your tourist guides, if they're really keen to remain as tourist guides, they're hanging at home. Is it not possible to come up with some good courses to upgrade their expertise, their understanding, so that they can become a more competent tourist guides? Otherwise, their tourist guides can give very superficial because over time, if they don't use the knowledge keeps degrading. So this becomes a time for us to actually improve the standard, so that for when the travel comes back again, we come back on the special footing. And the other thing is also about promotion, because the history of Malaysian promotion, we use Visit This Year, Malaysia Truly Asia. This is a big budget advertisements. And I think after the visit, after the Malaysia Truly Asia, Indian tourism also got inspired by Malaysia. And you came out with Incredible India, which is fantastic, a fantastic promotional effort. But this is expensive. So that is why I was saying that we need to reinvent ourselves by coming with something that becomes more cost effective, more targeted, and actually having a much more impact. Because now it's actually going down, looking at your target groups, looking at target segments, and going down there in order to sell in your proposition. No longer this kind of big scale, kind of like mega promotion. You can do that once in a while, but if you keep on doing that, it is really expensive. These are it takes too much money to do that. Now our resources tend to be very limited, so we need to be more effective in the way we promote tourism. And don't keep quiet, even when you don't think people are traveling yet. You must be at the top of people's mind, right? Keep selling them all these things, the fascination, like India, the fascinating things for India, keep selling. So it's always at the back of the mind. When situation is ready for people to travel, they will go to India.
Yes, truly, branding and taglines, they catch the attention of the public. So while ending this webinar for today, may I have your last valuable suggestions for Indian tourism that you want to give?
Yes, I think India is a fantastic destination because of the vast expanse of the country, because of the culture, because of but I think in terms of Indian tourism, it's moving towards also quality. Yeah? So it is a process of trying to improve the quality of the how India is presented, and some of it also will be linked up with like infrastructure and all that. So you need to do investments. It's not tourism alone, but you have to work with the other sectors in order for the country itself to be very successful in Indian tourism. For instance, when I lead groups over to India and we travel by road, in this pilgrimage, some of the road, although I can see a lot of improvements because I've been traveling in India for quite a while. I've seen a lot of improvements, but yet the standards have to be further improved in terms of quality of the tourist buses. The design of the tourist buses tends to be old. You need to basically look like European type buses. Some even like double deckers, really comfortable. So the design must completely change. You cannot make use of the give a new bus but based on an old design. You cannot do that. This becomes an opportunity to reinvent. India has to look about, if you're going to have a 5-star tourism industry, what must be in place for us to kind of come up with a 5-star. It is not incremental improvements. Of course, some of the tourists that you go tends to go for more like the mid-level, but you have also the potential to go for the 5-star. So you have to look into what is it needed in order to do the 5-star, so that the quality of the service and the presentation all fits together. So that you need to work on that, right? I could actually see when I lead pilgrimages to India, actually the situations have actually improved a lot, but still there are still work to be done. Work to be done. I've seen that how Bodh Gaya itself has become so much better. Each of the pilgrimage places is much better. I could actually see the improvements each time when I go. But if you really want to build, really much more things, you have to look into the details. And so there is all this scope. But even in Malaysia, there is all this scope because we are always trying to continually improve ourselves. And this must be our attitude. We must never come to a time to say, oh, we are good enough. It is just like that. All this thing, where are the areas that we can start pushing the boundaries? I think that's the way to go.
So I'm saying this from core of my heart that is just really worth listening to you today, and I've learned so much. And one thing, the way you have explained the things, very honestly, very clearly, and very passionately, and from your heart, you have talked today. So we wish for the early recovery of global tourism, not just of one particular region. And we want that your valuable suggestions to be heard by some important persons, and few more changes do come. And you have rightly said there is always a scope of improvement. And with this, I want to thank you once again for coming on our platform and giving your valuable time. And we will look forward for more such webinars with you, sir, to get education on tourism. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, Chitra. I'd like to give my appreciation and thanks to ICSI for inviting me to be a speaker this evening. Thank you.
Ji, sir. So any prayer that you want to say in the end, like anything that you always do while we want to listen to that prayer.
Yes, I pray for your good health.
Thank
Please
you,
keep
sir.
yourself, because this time is not such a so we need especially to look after ourselves and our loved ones, and try and we are looking forward for for some brighter future moving ahead, once we cross this area of this time of the pandemic. May you and your loved ones be blessed with happiness and good health and safety.
Thank you, sir. So this is Chitra Kapoor signing off for today in this webinar. Very informative webinar. Do share this video link with all your team members, your family members, so that they are more aware about tourism and tourism industry and the kind words which has been conveyed to us by Dr. Victor V. Thank you once again, sir, and I'm signing off. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, sir.